Hello, you're listening to My Pop 5, a pop culture podcast about people. In our show, we bring on guests to break down 5 pieces of pop culture that had an influence on them or helped shape them to become the people that they are today. I'm your host, Ryan, and I want to start today's show by thanking everyone for all the love and support in the first few weeks of the show. It's been so exciting to see this show come to life, and the response has truly been incredible. Today, we have a really special guest for you. Our producer Daniel and I had the chance to interview Devon Corey, an incredible music producer out here in the Los Angeles area. Devon has worked with artists such as Bebe Rexha, Trevor Daniel, Lane, Mothika, and numerous other incredible musicians. I've personally had the privilege of working with Devon many times, as he's been the primary producer for my band Pool Toys. I had so much fun talking with Devon, and I was really thrilled at the wide range of topics on his Pop 5. This episode was recorded prior to the pandemic, and Taylor Swift has released 3 more records since then, but it's still a great conversation. So let's get into it. Here's our episode with Devon Corey. We are here with Devon Corey. He is a producer out here in Los Angeles, a very good friend of mine. As you all know, my band Pool Toys. We've had the great pleasure of working with him on all of our latest music, and he is just a gem of a person, and we're so happy to have him. So thank you so much for being here, Dev.
Thank you. I've never been called a gem before.
First time for everything, and now it's on record.
Yeah,
I know.
first of many.
And now I'm going to put that in my Instagram bio.
Right.
TVNCY, a gem.
People are going to follow it, so you better follow through with it. So before we start off, and I don't know if you have it handy, but can you list your Pop 5 with no comment, no context?
Scream, Taylor Swift's Red album, Brand New, and memes. Oh, YouTube as well, yeah.
Cool. All right, so first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? I know we were both born in the state of New Mexico, but I know your life has taken you in a couple different states.
Yeah, born and raised in New Mexico with my boys. I moved to Florida when I was 18 to go to Full Sail to learn how to like engineer and how to work on making music or whatever. I lived there for like 2 years and then moved to LA right after when I was still 19 at the time when I moved to LA. And I got hired when I turned 20 for my like first like internship. But now I'm like officially this month, about mid-month, will be 8 years that I've been living in LA, which is pretty insane to think about.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I imagine at some point you're going to hit a situation where you've lived in LA potentially longer than anywhere else.
Yeah, potentially, man. I feel like inside I'm like, every time I'm comfortable, I want to just pull the ripcord and escape whatever situation. So I feel like there's going to be a point where LA ideally gets to a point to where like I'm functioning just fine. I'm not worrying about things as much. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm going to be like, I need to move. I'm going to move to New York or something, right? For like a year or two. Sure. I would love to live in a few places, not just in LA. But yeah, man. So I've just been out here for 8 years making music with people and trying to survive. It's pretty insane, honestly. 8 years is a long fucking time. Dude.
It is, man. Yeah. And what originally brought you out to LA? I know Florida, it was for Full Sail, mm-hmm. but was it work that you had lined up or was it just on a whim?
Yeah, basically it was just like, I was between New York and LA, and New York was where I wanted to go just because New York is cooler. I wanted to like be in New York, but everything was coming out of LA, at least that I was looking at the time musically, and all the producers that I wanted to like meet and all the engineers and stuff all lived in LA and worked out of LA. So I pretty much just like won that. To financially, I'm 18, I'm not making any money. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm going to move somewhere and I don't have any money. So I need to have a community or whatever. And my buddy Maddox and my buddy Peyton, who both went to Full Sail, they were moving out here. And so we all just decided to like team up and get an apartment together. So it was like 5 of us living in a 2-bedroom in Van Nuys when we first moved out here. But all of us were like in music, or Peyton's in game audio. This guy John was out here at the time too for engineering and stuff.
And these were friends you made at Full Sail?
Yeah, Maddox was like my bud all through Full Sail. Me and him, it was like me and him and one other guy that were like always hanging out all the time. So Maddox and I wanted to live together anyways. I talk to Maddox every day pretty much. Like we're boys. We all just like moved out together and none of us had any money or anything. And we're like, it's pretty crazy actually. Maddox literally just got a Grammy. He just won a Grammy this year.
For what work?
The 21 Savage album. He mixed that album. It was like our best rap album.
Awesome.
Insane. I was texting him about it yesterday, being like, dude, there was a point, I always tell this because like it was such a staple thing. We would go buy like together if we both had like $5 pulled in together. We'd go buy a bag of bagels. And then I would split. I'd eat half of the bagel and he'd eat half the bagel because we were like, we'll make it last longer if we just eat it this way. And like, we're so broke, dude. None of us had any money. And now he lives in Atlanta. He just had a kid and he won a Grammy. And it's been 8 years. Like he's doing amazing. He's doing like tremendously well. It's just so crazy to think like 8 years, even though it feels like a long time, it's really not that long.
Right.
And it was just recent that we were like, whoever left leftovers at the studio, whatever clients were there that left their leftovers, we would steal them and bring them home so that we could all eat. Or like Maddox would have like some, wrapper through or whatever. And then he'd bring back like a handle of like Belvedere, or like some like nice alcohol that we like all party and like drink and stuff. Even it's like someone's leftovers. Yeah. We did that for years. We did that for most of the time that we've been out here, honestly.
I think it's so cool to see, your friends flourish that have been grinding for a long time.
Hell yeah, man.
And that's not to say though that you don't have your own credits too, because I know, and we'll get into your career so far a little bit more in depth, but you have some pretty well-known artists that you regularly work with. And I know even our friend Colin, who is regularly out there working with some bigger artists as well. So it is cool, but I don't want it to, just because Maddox won the Grammy doesn't diminish, the same amount of work that you've done in those 8 years as well.
I know. So that was such an interesting sensation of being like super proud and being like, yeah, dude, you're the man. Like you just, and also I've seen what he's put in and just being like, you deserve that shit more than anyone. And also feel that internal, like, oh man, I should have, why haven't I won one yet? Am I fault? Like, am I not doing enough or whatever? We were nominated last year, which was pretty crazy anyways. You know what I mean?
With Bebe?
With Bebe, yeah, for Meant to Be. So that alone is like so crazy, such an insane feeling. You know what I mean? But that's like not on me. That was on like Best New Artist and stuff like that. That wasn't like for the merit. Whereas like, I never thought that I would be like interested in like a Grammy or something in that sense, like to where I'd be like, oh man, I'd like to win one of those or whatever. Like you just think of it as like, that would be cool, but it's also like, who cares? And now I'm like, all right, Maddox got one. I got to get one too. Cause I'm always trying to keep up with him. He's like my favorite mixer. I send him anything I do. And I'm always like, I'm just trying to mix like you, man. Like I'm just trying to be as good as you are. He's so amazing at it.
And what do you think the core differences are? What are the things that you value in someone who mixes?
I don't know. For him, it's like he's so like the least egotistical person. If you send him something, he's just going to mix it how you need it done. He's not crazy about gear. He's not making it sound like him. He's just always been amazing at just being like cool with whatever he gets and then just giving the client what they want. I think that's the most admirable quality to have in any kind of art form, is like you're not supposed to impose yourself on it. You're supposed to just like bring out their voice in any way. And he's phenomenal at it. Not to mention, just technically speaking, he's an amazing mixer. If he wanted to, he could be like the biggest mixer right now. Like, like that, not even saying that as like, I believe in him. Like he literally could, if he just like, he just doesn't, he's like, no, man, it's like, I got a kid. I want to be able to feed my family and live a good life, but I don't want to do the guys who are like the best it's a 24-hour 365. There's 3 assistants working all day. There's you never stop. And he's just like, that sounds miserable. So he just doesn't want to do it. So he's just like, not even accidentally, but just like very casually becoming like one of the best mixers. I love it. I think he's so sick. I mean, he's the band.
For the audience who doesn't necessarily know what a producer does, and I know there are so many people who float around that term saying that that's what they do. How would you define what music production is and what, the varying differences are in how people use the term?
Yeah, I would say the way that I feel about it is maybe a more traditional sense of the term of like, it's basically a person just like steering the ship. Your job is to understand this artist in ideally a way that no one else possibly can, and translate what's coming out of them. That could be you're the type of producer who's like a musician and they have these amazing ideas, but they can't physically play them. And then you have to be the person to step in and voice and develop their sound that way. But you could also be like with you guys or with any of my TK artists, like our friends, you know, everyone's amazing musicians and talented producers. And it's like, I'm not going to tell them what to do or anything. My job is to just be like a window.
Yeah.
And just try to like show people what this artist is through like a way that they can understand it. Cause sometimes it's, you know, comes out as this big jumble. And then your job is to like not change how it felt when it came out of them, but just make it a little more palatable and easy to understand for someone else, you know, like you're just trying to translate essentially what they're saying. I feel like that is all the producers that I've always looked up to. Those are those guys. It's not that they were amazing musicians or whatever. They were just like the people who could work with someone that most people would not be able to understand or be in the room with in general, and bring the best out of them, like, and show it in a way that everyone can understand. Like someone like Rick Rubin or like these amazing producers, you know?
Yeah.
That are like famous for, they won't do just like, you know, you could be a really, really amazing track producer and make like really great pop songs or really great hip hop songs or whatever. But it's very rare that you see producers that are like crossing platforms, you know, where it's like Rick Rubin would be like System of a Down, and then he's in the room with like Jay-Z, and then he's just an amazing producer. He's worked with everyone, you know. And he's also like a producer in the sense of like how people kind of use it now, of like make beats and stuff like that. Like when he was younger, that was what he was doing. I think he just kind of like evolved into what he is now.
Did you know when you were in school that the producer you wanted to be was more the one who's driving the bus and not necessarily the one who's creating beats or creating music?
I think kind of, but not necessarily. I didn't really know what any of it was.
Right.
The first time I'd heard the term producer was Kanye Graduation, that album. Oh, that should have been one of my top 5. Oh my God. That album changed my life. When I heard, that's the first time I ever heard of like what a producer was. And where I was like, oh, well, that sounds like something I want to do, you know? Like,
and when was this?
That was, I was late to Kanye. I was probably, I bet, freshman or junior year. Shout out John Swick, because he's the guy.
In high school, though?
He played it for me, and I was like, what? What is this?
And what were you listening to at that time?
Just tons of like post-hardcore and pop punk and carabiner emo kid stuff, you know, like all the stuff that like we grew up with in the suburbs, I guess, you know.
Sure. I want to get into the, you know, production side of things, because one of these things on your Pop 5, which is the Taylor Swift Red album, you frequently have said it's the best produced album, you know, you've ever heard. You know? I want to, you know, deep dive into that a bit, but why don't you start by telling us what you love so much about that record and what you value so much out of the production?
Yeah. I think it's like a multitude of things, that album specifically. One, that album came out like right when I moved to LA. I remember being on Van Nuys on Sepulveda Boulevard, going down to this like super Target that we were always like, since we were broke, we would always go to this Target and just like walk around because we just wanted to like get out of the house but we couldn't do anything, you know? I went to the Target and I had like a little extra cash or whatever and bought the album, and I was just by myself. I put it in, and then I just drove around all day listening to it. I think it hit me in like just the right time that I probably have like a super biased viewpoint of like why it's good. But it is truly like a perfectly made album. Like this, I mean, obviously it's songwriting, just traditional songwriting. Every single song is so just like perfectly crafted and like well written. And then, you know, the production, the mixing, everything, because it was an interesting time for music. There was like this is coming out of like, it was like what, 2012? Yeah. So we're like, I feel like 2010 to 2015, even maybe later, was such a weird time for music where there was no identity and there was no one there. I mean, sure, there were people. Pop music was so weird, you know, like Jason Derulo's, like just like people who are like making great songs, or they're putting out good pop songs, but like no one's fans of anyone. No one's like has a color or a tone or like a focus, you know? And I felt like that album was interesting because she had the roots of like where she came from. It sounded like a record made in Nashville. You know what I mean? Like it sounded like a band record, but then it would also have like this production and in a weird time when like dubstep was still kind of a thing.
Definitely,
and like
yeah.
all of those, like that kind of like style of production was just so weird. And like, it's just kind of like had an array of all of those things, you know, but still had heart in storytelling, which like songwriting, you know?
Yeah.
Like I never thought I would know like every word to a Taylor Swift album. Like I just never really listened to her growing up. I missed her until then pretty much, you know, other than like big hits. And that album just like hit me. Like I hadn't thought technically or felt emotionally like I did when I heard that record. And then how I consumed it, just like who knows what that day was like. It was probably a hard day and I was like treating myself to buy this thing, and then I just drove around for hours and just listened to it over and over again and just like studied it until I like got home that night. Just such an incredible album.
I don't know if this is the same day, but definitely on your Instagram there is a photo of you holding that CD and a Red Bull in the same photo.
Oh, that's absolutely that day. Yeah.
Oh man, that
was
cool.
a big day then. That means that day I had $20 in my account and I was ready to fucking spend it all and go.
Because you could afford a Red Bull and
Because I'm like, during that time, it was like, I was talking to a friend about this recently. I'm like, if I had $1, it was amazing. Maddox and I would sit and scrounge up quarters. We would do anything we could to just have any money. When I moved to LA, I had, my mom and my dad were like, did a Costco run with me, you know? And I had like a case of Austin crackers, like those like terrible cheddar
the
crackers.
Cheese and peanut butter cheese with cheese.
Yeah, we had those, and then a big box of pistachios. And there was a good like month of my life that's all I ate was just those crackers and those pistachios. Like my first time ever getting paid, when I got switched off of being like a runner and I was kind of like the head runner and started getting like $7 an hour or whatever. The manager,
this was interning at a studio.
Yeah, this was at Ocean in Burbank. That's a whole nother planet of stories, that studio. But Greg, the manager, he was just like, I remember him being like, dude, what the fuck? I can't watch you eat those anymore. I'm like, I can't afford anything. And he's like, we'll start paying you, but like, eat a fucking burger, dude. Like, do something, you know? Like, yeah. Because I literally lived off that shit. So that album, like, if it was enough for me to post about it, that's so funny. I didn't even know that. Yeah, it must have been a big day. Because that album literally, like, to this day, is so important to me. I'll listen to it. Now I'm definitely going to listen to it like tomorrow and just to like refresh on it, because it's definitely been a while.
I definitely did. After you told me, you know, that we were going to be talking about it, I went through and listened to it all again. And for those people who know me, know that I'm a pretty big Taylor fan.
Yeah.
I love a lot of her work, but I similarly didn't have any sort of relationship with her music until, actually, for me, it was more 1989.
Yeah.
But, you know, early Taylor, my only association with it was she was this country girl that all the girls in middle school listened to, you know, and wanted to sob and cry to. What I started to learn with Taylor, both through Red and 1989, was similar to what you were saying. There is a level of songwriting and cohesion from track to track that she's able to actually create a singular, you know, feeling and story and actually build out a narrative through her records.
Exactly.
What I wanted to ask was, on Red, what I find fascinating is what you took away was that there is this level of cohesion and that there is this storytelling that she's able to create, and how you said it was all like one band sound, but the entire record is produced by like 5 different producers.
Yeah, it's all
like,
over the place.
Some of the dubstep tracks were Max Martin and Shellback, and then she had her Nashville guys and like Nathan Chapman and stuff. And on her later records, like Lover, like the one she just did in 1989, she had more of, she sits in a room with Jack Antonoff and you know, creates stories that way. Do you think it's that it happens frequently that people are able to create single projects with multiple different producers as a producer, or do you think there's more value in having one guy that's going to sit with you throughout the entire project?
Yeah. I think it depends, because I mean, I'm always going to be like, as few people as possible between what you're trying to say and getting it out there. So like one guy through the whole record is probably going to give you a better product every single time, you know? But in that side of the industry, I feel like it's just not the case a lot of the time. You just have to, everyone's bouncing between different writers because so-and-so's A&R said so, or the label wants you to be in this room because this guy's a big producer right now. So it's like you kind of get jumbled. But if you're someone like, I would say like a Taylor Swift, who's like very powerhouse, you know what I mean? Knows her vision, the type of person she is, what she wants to sound like. She could be in the room with 20 different people and probably still come out with a cohesive narrative at the end of it because she's in control. I think if you're that type of artist that has that sense of power and control, then you could do that, you know? I wouldn't say, though, to be fair, that the Red Album is a great descriptor of Taylor Swift as like a human. I just think it's a perfectly made record. The mixing, the songwriting, like on a technical standpoint, that record is just perfect to me. And in a lot of ways, like I feel like it was a weird time. There was no identity in anyone. She's amazing at always being like slightly behind whatever trend is and then putting out the best version of that trend.
Sure.
Like 1989, I was like mad because basically like the 80s in pop, like that wave of like that movement had kind of died out like completely.
Yeah.
And then she's like, here's my record. And it's like a total 80s record. And I was just like what? I kind of bothered me. Like,
sure.
Even though incredible songs, I was just like, you just waited until you saw that it was working. And then you just like put out all these great songs. It felt like too calculated. Whereas like the Red Album is just like, here's just a bunch of great songs on a record. It didn't feel as calculated to me because like, how could she? There was no identity. The only closest thing is like Trouble and stuff like those like weird like just like production was just them being like, I don't know, kids are into this shit right now. This is weird.
Yeah,
you know?
on Trouble, I was laughing because it's dated now that I went back and listened to it. Because like right before she goes into the chorus, there's just like one of those bass drops that was only during that time where it's just you know, right before the chorus comes in, you know.
So dumb.
But it is dated. I want to fight you a little bit on 1989, but that's not what the podcast is
I know
about.
that album. I feel like I get arguments with it because I'm always like, I don't know. But I think maybe I've never been like a Taylor Swift fan necessarily. Just this one album, I was just like, everything checked. It checked all the boxes of like what my brain needs in a song, you know, or in an album. And my favorite song is that one, "Stay" on there. Stay. I love that song. And like, I would never be like around people and be like, listen to this song, it's incredible. Because it's just like, it's like probably like the weakest song on the album. But for whatever reason, I just like, I love that song. Something about it is just so, it just like worked for me when I heard it. And yeah, I don't know. That album is so strange, but so important to me.
We'll get back to the show in just a moment. No, this isn't an ad read, but we do have a couple things that we'd love to share. I've been getting quite a few questions about how you can support the show. The truth is you're already doing it by listening, but if you're looking to do a little bit more, the best way is to support our show is to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Rating and reviewing truly does make all the difference for podcasts, so leave us a review, and in that review, tell us what your Pop 5 is, and we'll read it on the show. Another way to help us out is just following us on Instagram at MyPop5. We post short recaps of the show and include video or music clips that are referenced in the episode. They're some of our favorite pieces of content to produce. Anyway, thank you again for listening, and we'll get back to the show.
I think it's excellent. And I remember when you and I first met, we actually, well, it wasn't exactly when we first met. We met out here in LA when my band was touring. But the first time you and I ever had any sort of connection was back in New Mexico. You came out there and we recorded in Cabin, the most recent Pool Toys music that we're going to be releasing. And you and I had a lot of time to talk about music and geek out on shit because we would have to do grocery store runs back into town, which was like 45 minutes away. And
on times when, we would be recording drums or anything like that, the rest of the band would go do the grocery runs, and then you and I are just stuck in the cabin shooting the shit for most of the time. And that was when you first told me, like, oh, Taylor's Red album that's what you got to go fucking listen to. And so I remember as a drummer first starting that record, and it starts with this on that state of grace. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. Like I instantly heard the production, and I'm like, this record smashes. And listening today, I agree that there are so many songs that are so perfect. Like I remember like hearing 22, you know, like that song just feels so good. So I really love the record too. But what I think it does, and this is where I think maybe I have a different perspective on 1989, is this was her first time of ever exploring any sort of like a pop crossover, right? And it was only really 3 songs. It was like 22, I Knew You Were Trouble, and We're Never Getting Back Together. Those are like the only 3, and the rest are pretty solid. Like, this is a country record, and I'm going to tour this as a country record. But when 1989 comes out, it was, I'm a pop star, and I'm killing this pop genre. And sure, maybe there were elements in the production because it was mostly a Max Martin and Jack Antonoff type of collaboration that she did. And there may have been some tropes that other people had already done on the record, but it doesn't mean, and there's no precedent of someone just being able to do that and kill it on their first pop record that they've ever done. You know, so
that's actually a super, I don't mean to interrupt you. That's a really fascinating way to think about it that I never thought about. It was a pretty transitionary record for her because, but I guess I had always just considered her a pop artist because I didn't ever do the like country side of her. Like Lane will always play me songs and be like, oh, this one. And it's all like what you're saying, like when you're in middle school, like, oh, she's like, this is what girls listen to. Like all the songs that Lane plays me, I'm like, I've never heard any of this. And I also don't really like it or whatever. But that album was incredible. But that kind of makes me, just you describing it that way, makes me want to re-listen to it with like a different palette of like, of how I'm absorbing it. Because I might hear it differently thinking about it that way. To me, it just felt like it's such a safe thing to be like, oh yeah, everyone did 80s. I always use, this is going to sound lame or rude, but like when you see like Demi Lovato put out a tune, she's usually like, I feel like the back end of whatever pop trend is working. And as soon as she puts it out, it's like that scene's done. And she put out that Cruel for the Summer song. And I'm pretty sure that came out. And then 1989 was like a little bit after that. And I was just like, yo, the 80s are dead in pop music. Like, what are you doing? You know, even though it's like, that's a whole nother thing. The 80s, I think, is always, will never die. You can always use it. But like, at least as heavily used as it was of the fucking bass lines and stuff, like, that was a weird moment for her to be like, jump in. And then she also did that one song. What's that one song on 1989 that sounds like it would be on the Lion King soundtrack or something?
Oh, Wildest Dreams.
Yeah, that song. I was just like, what is this
it probably
about?
didn't help that her music video legitimately was like an African safari. And
really?
Her like in the Sahara plains.
I just felt like that song didn't make any sense to me. Considering like the other singles that she was putting out. Regardless, she's incredible and only puts out incredible songs. Even her like album what's the one where she's like
Reputation?
Yeah, that everyone hates. It was like trending because everyone hates it, and it like after everyone sat with it after a while, they're still like, oh, I mean, there's some pretty good songs.
My hot take is that Reputation is actually fire if you go back and listen to it. Like, I think if you consume it in a vacuum, you know, and like, this is just a record that I'm going to listen to, there's so many good moments on it. You know? I think it's so hard for people to, you know, look at, this was a country star and now she's sitting there with trap beats and rapping with Ed Sheeran. You know?
Wait, what a time to be alive.
What was the album that had the Kendrick Lamar remix?
That was
Bad Blood.
Bad Blood was on 1989.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Devon, because I think you kind of touched on it a little bit ago. You had mentioned that you wouldn't necessarily, you know, in a bar or at a party be like, hey, listen to this Taylor Swift song. And I think that those are kind of conversations that me and Ryan have sometimes, because it is kind of has that stigma of being girly pop music. So for something that you feel was so influential for you, what might you say to maybe the casual music listener that maybe feels that pop music has no artistic merit?
Yeah. Yeah, no, actually that's a good question, because I think that is like commonplace. You can hear me closing my whiskey, sorry. That is like shameful to like pop music, and it's such a funny thing. Like it shouldn't be. It's popular music.
Yeah.
Like everyone loves it. Well, you shouldn't be, you just think that you need to have cred. Like I can't listen to what's hot right now like on the charts. I can only listen to like, oh, this is this like really cool indie artist that like no one's heard it yet, but they got a lot of buzz. Like that's way cooler in casual conversation than being like, yo, Taylor Swift is tight and I love her. You know, like everyone has that like guilty pleasure style of music or whatever. And it's always like, it could be different for every person, you know? But it's like, we all got it. So like, we should be a little more like comfortable being like, yo, no, this is incredible music and I love listening to it. You know?
I've always have no shame about the stuff I like, you know, there was moments that like when I first met Sean, our keyboard player in our band, like we were going through, you know, the trunk of my car and I found like an old High School Musical CD and I was like, fuck it, we're bumping this, you know? And so I have no shame in mentioning my love for Taylor or any of this kind of outside stuff. So I'm hopeful that can, you know, even within our conversations here, we can end that type of stigma.
Battle that no one knew needed to be fought.
Exactly. I'm curious, in the circles that you work in, you work with Bebe Rexha, you've worked with DJ Mustard, you worked as an intern on recording for The Voice. In those circles, do you feel that also exists, that there's a need to not love pop music? Or in those circles, is it's like, no, we're killing this game, and so I'm going to admire other people who are doing the same thing?
I don't know. I think it's different all the time. So like when I was on The Voice, that was when I was at Ocean. I was assisting, and I was just like the Pro Tools op basically for the show, or for all the band recording, and all the engineers and stuff and producers are like, they're like old rockhead dudes that have done some like incredible, like the engineer on The Voice, Tim Harkins. He worked with like Korn. He worked with like heavy bands, like, or like cool, like late 90s, early 2000s, like rock shit. And Bill Appleberry, the producer, he had done like Edema and like a bunch of, like, they're like rock engineers. So I think it was like a weird world to be like, you know, everyone on that show is like, I think when you're in television, it's like one of those things where this is just like, it's really hard to find like a really solid gig. And this is like the most solid gig, you know? And so they're like, their opinions on the music is like, it hardly matters. It's more like the grand scheme of like the show.
Whereas it doesn't change that they do a good job either.
Exactly. Yeah. Or I'd say with like when I work with, you know, larger artists or whatever, pop artists or whatever, like, you know, they're students of the world they live in. Like Bebe blows my mind constantly, where she knows like she'd give you a run for your money of like pop music. Like it's crazy how studied she is. She knows what she's doing. She's a pop artist, you know?
Yeah.
And not to I feel like even saying that feels like I'm diminishing her in some way, because she is like super into alternative music and like wants to put an edge on things, and is truly like, she is a very powerful, amazing artist, but she is wildly studied in pop music. She knows like anything top 40, she knows it. And it's nuts. Like she appreciates the craft, you know, which I think like true, like Max Martin-esque production and songwriting and stuff is like, those people that are in that world are very proud of pop records and very proud of whatever's coming out and studying it constantly, because that's their world. That's like that's the thing that they've perfected. Like Max Martin. I mean, he's like, he's the king of being like, here's the exact formula to a hit song, you know, and he's done it for 30 years. And everyone's just like, yeah, you are literally the best.
And what's crazy is like, I keep thinking that he has duds. I think like everyone does.
Yeah.
More often than not, if it's on top 40, Max Martin was involved with it.
He's smart, man.
Oh man. And it's crazy, you know, but then like, I admire like when Lorde, for example, will, you know, bring him in to work on like Green Light.
Yeah.
And Max Martin's like, nah, this ain't gonna hit. The formula's all wrong. And she just says, nah, fuck you. This is my song. And to be fair, Green Light didn't have the success that Katy Perry's Teenage Dream record had, any of the
huge Taylor songs did or Backstreet Boys or anything else that Max Martin worked on, but she has her own lane, and that record had its own fame as well. So, man, it's crazy though, that world, because there can be and there is a formula, at least from Max Martin's
to a certain
perspective.
extent. There's also like a certain level of power that once you get to a certain point, it's like anything he does is going to be a hit in a sense, because any label is going to just back it no matter what, because he's Max Martin. Like, he's proved it. He's done it a million times. Like, he will again, you know? That's so funny. I hate that song, that Lord song.
Greenlight?
I hate it so much.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about it either. And I think like Melodrama is probably one of my favorite records ever, just period.
Yeah.
I listened to it again the other day just because I was thinking about Greenlight, for example, and the song that ends the record, which is, oh my gosh, Perfect Places is on Melodrama. They're probably her weakest, songs on the record, bookends. But when you listen to the whole record, man, there's so many good things. And I just respect Jack Antonoff so much. Like, he's the opposite of what we were talking about with having multiple producers and songwriters in a room. And generally it's just him working with St. Vincent or him working with Lord or him working with Taylor. And he's one of those people like how you work, where it's just like, it's going to be me and you in a room and we're going to make fucking beautiful music.
Yeah, we're going to make a song. Yeah. He's one of those guys that you're talking about earlier. Like, he is like an incredible producer, and it shows in his work. It shows in his success that he cares about identity and developing, and the artists that he has do well are like someone like St. Vincent. She's not necessarily like a big artist. She's not like a household name, but she is like one of the most widely respected musicians and artists on the planet right now. Yeah. It's like, if you're making music with that person, like, he alone has to be at a certain caliber to even just like sit in the room with her, you know what I mean? Because she is phenomenal.
And like, it's never stops with him. Like, he just did Melodrama, he worked on, and the Lord record, and he was nominated for Best Record. Same thing with the St. Vincent. Same thing with Lana Del Rey's record he just did. So he has a formula, and it's working, I think, in his own right too. That's the opposite of the Max Martin effect, where it's like, we have our guys and we're going to create this thing. Jack is very much like, I'm going to be the window and the driver and the catalyst to help you find your voice, and we're going to create this picture. And so I value that. But anyway, I love Red. It was awesome to hear your story, but I want to make sure we get to your other things as well. Yeah. You mentioned a name a bit ago, and luckily I have the privilege of knowing this person, but I also know it's someone who's very important to you, Lane. Can you talk about your relationship with Lane, who she is, kind of how you met, and talk about your story together?
Yeah. Lane is like my like blood family at this point. You know what I mean? But Lane is like the first person I really met when I moved to LA, of like outside of my little group of like Maddox and Peyton and us. Just like, she's the first artist I met. And the first time we met, we made a song together because our friend Haley, who's like another amazing artist, she introduced us, and she was like, oh, you should meet this girl. Like, she likes pop punk music too. Like, you guys should make a song together. And we made like this awful, terrible song that I have somewhere in the archives that I'll just never show to anybody. But we met, and we honestly were friends for like maybe 2 years before we ever worked together, like really for the first time. And then she has been truly like, there's no project I have right now in the indie community really that I didn't get, or at least have the conversation about getting, without her. We've been making music together for a long time now, but like, we started making music and it was doing well, at least on our scale of things. And then every other artist I have right now, other than one, is an artist that I found through them being like, I really love Lane's records, or I really like it. It all came through like Lane. It's such a crazy thing. But my whole career has been like, she's been my guinea pig for everything. You know, like I slept on her floor for a year when I couldn't afford to live anywhere. I would have been in my car without her, you know? And during that time, it's like, we did the first single that we did that did well was the song Good. And that was like, I was on her floor. I cut it at like a kitchen table, like the one you guys have here, and like put like blankets up all over the walls and like stuffed her in the closet, you know, and like we cut that at the table. I mixed it on my DT880s, my little headphones, and like that song did really well. That was like the first time I'd ever produced something that like did well, or well in our, again, in like an indie standpoint, you know, because it was like only, I think it's like 3 million plays or something. It's not like crazy. That was like, she's always been the first glimpse of like what we could do independently without anything, and with like in the most minimal means of creating anything. I feel like our entire friendship and relationship is based off of that, like dire circumstances and doing the best with what you can in them, and emotionally as well as like musically, you know what I mean? Because we've gone through some crazy stuff together in our like 6 years of knowing each other, you know?
Sure. And to fill in some gaps for the listener, a lot of what you'll hear Devon referring to is that he has a roster of artists that he works with. And you can talk to this a little bit more because I know it stemmed from yours and Lane's idea, so it keeps us in the same topic. But Devon is a music producer, and the artists he's referring to include my band Pool Toys, and he has a bit of an artist collective called Telephone Killer, where we all work with Devon. He's our producer. And why don't you talk about maybe where that started? I know it stemmed from your relationship with Lane, but kind of explain a little bit what the idea is for Telephone Killer. And
cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like, I'd say at this point, TK is like 6 bands. It's you guys, Pool Toys, Lane, our friend Love Glow, Early Internet, Hen Reeves, but it's like a small collective of people, and it's through the experiences that I've had with Lane of us like doing well enough to have people pay attention, and then have them be like, listen, your music is gonna get you fans. You're gonna have so many fans. Like people are gonna, like, you have like this cult thing, like it's gonna work, but you don't have a hit, so like we don't know what to do with it, and just be turned down and like, but be proud of our music and have our community of other creators be telling us like, this stuff is good. Like you guys are doing something, you know, like reassuring us. We're not just blindly going in there being like, we're fucking great.
Right.
And I'm sure there's plenty of people who do that, who aren't making things that are going to do anything, you know. I would love that realness as well to certain things, you know. But like, I'm like, she's great, and we've been able to make like a lot of really great records together and develop we joke like a cult community of us. Just like, we find people who we believe in, and then we just tell them how much we believe in them, and like try to involve ourselves in it as much as possible. Like I've known you guys, well, I've known Morgan, your vocalist for your band, for years, like since we were 15, you know, and I never really was friends with him. We kind of just were in similar circles, and not until college, when our friend Colin was doing your guys' record when you guys were Great State, and was like sending it back and forth to me and like showing me that I like started paying attention to your guys' project. But I mean, that whole relationship, the first time we went and saw you was with Lane, and like Eric was like, yeah, dude, I like really love her music. I've been listening to it and I was like, I had no clue like that people had paid attention to her. She has been a center point in most bands that we figured out. But the education of what I've learned through her, through constant trial and error and a lot of like loss, you know, we've been able to like develop at least a decent foundation of education to be like, yo, here's these people that we also believe in that are amazing and don't have support and don't have enough numbers right now to like have a label be interested, but we have all the assets to make them sound incredible and to market them in the best way we can.
Right.
Like Telephone Killer, the whole idea is that like we all collectively have this skill set and our own knowledge of various different things that we can all just pull together and use to help each other's projects grow, instead of just being like an indie artist on your own trying to like email management and stuff like it's just so silly. Like your community is going to like lift you up, you know? And if all these kids are backing you, then that's like a good place to be. And even if you're not the biggest artist in the world, if kids actually care, you're good, you're set, you made it, you know? Like all the artists that I think we would collectively say we respect kind of exist in that world of like they can affect culture, they can affect others because of their music, not just that they're successful. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if that answers anything.
No, it does. No, it's good. And we obviously, love being a part of it from our perspective in the band, and it's such a cool thing. And that's why I'm thankful you kind of shared it for everyone out there who's listening.
Yeah. I hope, it's going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing, and people will know it. It's just only an idea for our small group right now, but I feel very good about it.
Sure. And we're going to have everyone on as guests as well, because we love all of their art as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. I do want to take things back a little bit. You've mentioned your love for pop punk more than once, and one of these bands on here, Brand New, definitely fills that pop punk emo vein. Before we get into it, though, I do want to have a little bit of a disclaimer. I think we're all aware that there is some controversy with this band.
I was going to text you about this. I was going to say maybe we should not do Brand New.
I kind of had some conflict going back and forth about this, because when we were talking about it and I pitched it as an option because I knew you had the love for the band, I was unaware of the controversy.
Oh, interesting.
And so now that I kind of went back, I was like, oh no. So before we move forward, I want to say that we recognize that there is some pretty lewd behavior and things that we definitely do not condone with this artist, but this is about you. And I want that to be the primary focus of this, is that there is an art that had an impact on you, and regardless of the reckless behavior that, took place by some of the members of that band, I don't think it changes what that music did mean to you at certain points. So why don't we go back and tell me a bit about how you discovered that band and kind of, your story with their music.
Yeah. I think honestly, my sister turned me on to them. My sister's 4 years older than me. And so she was always like on the wave of like cool emo music that I hadn't heard yet or whatever. I don't know, for whatever reason, where I was, I was like probably 15, 14, finding them for the first time. That band had a huge impact on my life in ways that like I still see unfold now, of like in my production where I'm doing something that I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of like, this is coming from that world. I don't know, something about the intensity of their music was always like the intense dynamic structure of like super whispery to loud to whispery to loud, these crazy aggressive dynamics that they've had in their records always has influenced everything that I've done in my life still, of like learning dynamics and how powerful it could be if you just like very simply do this quiet, do this loud, how much of an impact you can have on somebody with just that simple sentiment. That band taught me that. It was interesting. They're like an interesting band because like I listened to them for probably 10 years and couldn't point out a picture of any of the members. I just liked the music. But I've also never been the type to be like, oh, so-and-so in this band is like my favorite. I would just always like the music, and the music just exists as its own thing. It's kind of like against my job and what I do, but like, I just listen to the records. I'm not always thinking about who made it. I'm just listening to the song,
Yeah.
And Brand New was one of those for me where I was like, I purely just listen to their music and just like where I was in my life. And a lot of like my teen angst and bitterness and like not necessarily always being a good person when I was younger and stuff. Like a lot of it like spoke to me in a lot of ways because he has like very egotistical lyrics and a lot of stuff.
Sure.
But also very like self-deprecating and whatever. Like I can just remember so many times in my life like being summer and like being in the backyard like doing weeds and like have my Zune and just like listening to Brand New and just like feeling it, know, being like, yeah, my parents are, just like being upset, like they just were such an impactful band on me for my entire life. I still listen to them all the time. And now obviously it's a very different kind of thing where I'm like, should I listen to this? Should I even support this shit? Like, are you kidding me? But it had such a huge impact on my life. It's so hard not to like indulge in it every once in a while. They are just an amazing band.
One of my favorite things is when I was kind of going back and doing some research, like I stalk social media of all the guests in a lot of ways, right? And that's why I was able to call back your Taylor Swift photo with the Red Bull, but you probably have like 50% of your posts that you've ever made on Facebook or anything like that were either
Red Bull related or brand new related.
Yeah.
Gotta start the
My,
day with brand new.
my early like move to LA. They're that band, man. I adore the Deja, that album. Like, I just think that album is amazing end to end. It's one of those bands that like I will never not be in the mood to listen to. And one of the only, like, I'm always like, I go to a live show, unless I'm like absolutely hammered, I'm pretty just like, I'm listening and I'm like watching the drummer and like, I'm not like losing it. That was one of the only shows I've ever been to where I was like screaming, yelling the lyrics and like just being there. And also feeling they have such an insane cult following that like going to a show and feeling the energy of they walk onto stage. There's a moment where I went to a show like relatively recently within the past like 2 years with my roommate, who is also a huge fan of the band. And he's the same way, where he's like, you could put a lineup of dudes, could never tell you who's in the band. Like, no way. Like, and so we both like go to this show, and it was a weird venue. It was like a college, and me and him were like, I don't know, 25 or 26 at the time. We're like, we still seem like old guys at a college show, you know?
Yeah.
But it was like the energy of like just someone going to like slightly adjust a cable on stage or something. You feel this intensity of everyone just being like, it's about to happen. It's about to happen. And then they all walked out, and it was near Halloween. So they all dressed as like Waldo.
Wow.
And so like, you couldn't really tell who like their crew was dressed as Waldo, and they were. So like when they came on stage, there was this weird, like, no one was really sure if it was them or not.
Yeah.
You know? But it was one of the most like visceral, like the whole crowd, like all moving, and like we're middle to like a little ways back from the stage, and we're still like shoving kids and pushing, and there was this like little tiny couple in front of us, like very like little people, who like the boyfriend was definitely there because the girlfriend liked the music and he wasn't sure, and like me and Jorgen ended up having to like blockade this like couple in the whole time because they're like, these kids are just losing their minds all the way. Like, we're not close to the stage, and it's still as intense as if you were right at the front, you know, like people worship that band. And I feel like that style of like, the effect that they've had on people is what like I aspire to meet people who can do that with people. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's just like been a through line in my entire life, that record, like, or that band, like, because they've done it. They've done the thing that I wish that all of the people I believe can do. You
kind of touched on something pretty interesting that I just thought was really cool. Kind of when you mentioned that the band, in a lot of ways, just through listening to their music, it taught you a lot about, for instance, you know, something like dynamics.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of speaks a lot to, you know, why we look back on these kind of pivotal moments or pivotal albums that we listen to, and we're like, oh wait, like everything that I do is because I kind of learned it from listening to the music. That
definitely,
you know, for that matter, I mean, would you say that you still listen to Brand New about the same amount? Or
I mean, I definitely listen to him a lot still. I think it's like in waves. I definitely, like, when I was growing up and stuff, it was all the time. Now it's like, I'll go a little while. A lot of the time, I don't listen to music for fun anymore. Like, I'm always working on something. And so I'm either like listening to demos over and over again, or a lot of the time I'll have an artist that I'm about to work with send me a playlist of everything that they're inspired by. And then I'll just like live in that for a month so that like I can be kind of in their color palette. So it's very rare that I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to put on something because I feel like it. They're absolutely one of the bands that I could always do that, though. Like, any album other than Daisy, any album, I would do that. Like, I'll pull that up and I'll listen to it and I'll adore it the entire time, you know?
I learned something today with Daisy. Did you know that it had a different title before Daisy? So I guess 8 days before, or like they had like this 8-day window where they were like hyping up that they were going to announce the name of the album. And the original
title was supposed to be "And One Head Can Never Die."
Oh.
And then the next day they were like, never mind, it's Daisy. And like everyone was like, what was this whole build and hype about, only to change it like the next day? Yeah. So I wonder if like someone went rogue with that first title and they're like, no, fucker, you're not using that title.
Yeah. That's so fascinating.
I think something that's interesting that you've called on, and we've touched on it a little bit here, is somewhat balancing the idea of trying to separate the art from the artist in some ways. I've had some recent struggles with this, with stuff that's coming out, especially in the pop punk and rock music scene, about grooming underage fans and the Me Too movement and things like that. I'm wondering if you've had any sort of feelings of like, when you first heard about it, was it difficult to process, or, you know, what are your feelings on separating the art from the artist?
Yeah. I think with Brand New specifically, they were always separate. Like I never even thought of them as people. I just like these songs. So it was later, like now, you know what I mean? That I was like, you know, I would have a friend be like, "Are you cool listening to them still?" You know? And I'm like, honestly, no. But it's like also weird because it's like, you don't want to remotely, even in any sense, any breath of it, condone anything or influence the idea that you're even supporting this person's actions whatsoever. Because it's absolutely not okay. It's like, I mean, that shouldn't even have to be said, but it should be said. You know what I mean? It's absolutely fucking not okay. But I've had the hardest time not feeling their music in the same, like I still love the records because of what they meant to me when I was 15. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like that whole separate the art from the artist conversation is always so fascinating because it's like you see it a lot, not just in music, but just in film and television and comedians and like any art form. That struggle has become, especially in the past, you know, couple years of like people finding that they can have a voice and like say something, has really created a strange conversation that a lot of people probably didn't even ever consider that they need to have. Like you could go pull up any Michael Jackson YouTube video right now and look in the comments, and I get that they're all going to be like, I can't believe they said he would have done these things. But it's like, I mean, you know, like it's really difficult. My whole life is saying that the art is the person who made it. And Brand New, a lot of his lyrics are that. Like he is being a shit person. So it's like, in a lot of sense, not even a surprise that he would be a shitty guy. Yeah. Because listen to what he sings about, and it's pretty fucking shit, man. Like he says some really fucking not cool stuff that like now that I'm older and like listen, and actually I'm not just like fucking being ignorant about it. I'm like I have that battle. I really don't know. It's a very difficult thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I've struggled with it too. You know, the thing I equated it with is like imagining you've had this like really long-term relationship where everything about it was just like the best fucking relationship you can imagine. You put this person on the pedestal, and then when you first find out like something horrific about them, that feeling, you know, like, oh shit, there's this person that I idolized, and then now there's just this like horrific red flag that comes up, and now I don't know what to do, you know, because I have this love and admiration for this thing or person in my analogy, right? And now I'm just heartbroken because it's like all that stuff can't matter now because of this huge thing.
It's such an interesting dialogue. Like it's too complex, I feel like, to like really, I mean, it should be black and white. Yeah. This person shit, don't support anything that they do. Fuck that person. You know what I mean? Like it should be that simple because that's how that person should be treated. Yeah. But that's the difficult part is that you're like, yeah, I don't respect what this person was doing and how they were behaving. But it's the thing that they created exists outside of them. It's how you felt about it when you heard it. It's like you're not even attaching it to them anymore. You know, it's like so many people with Michael Jackson, people with R. Kelly, people with like all these artists who've just been like, the fucking worst people,
Yeah.
their fans still stand by everything. You know what I mean? I say, don't stand by that person. Like, don't be like, oh, it's all nonsense. Like, that's absolutely crazy. Like, why would these people say that? Like, they have no reason to lie about that, you know? But the actual, like, the music itself, the product that you purchased, it's like, that's the hard thing of like, you attach to the product that this person made, not necessarily them the entire time. As a consumer, it's like, as a consumer, you're self-identifying with art always. You buy a painting, it's like, this makes me feel like this. You watch a movie, I relate to it because I feel like I'm this character. Like, art is a relatively selfish consumption, you know? So like music, I think in a lot of ways, like, this person is saying this thing that I relate to because I feel this way right now in my life. I think a lot of people's attachment to songs and whatever is driven by that, like, kind of self-motivation. It's not necessarily dependent on the person who made it.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, that weird dialogue happens, or is created, I think, of like, you find out that the person that made it is literally the worst person that you would never want to be known to even think was you were supporting whatsoever. And yet you've attached this other thing outside of them that you're so in love with that you can't let go of, you know?
Yeah.
It's really, I don't know. I think it's so tough. That's a very difficult conversation.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think, you know, it might be just a personal decision.
Yeah.
Sure. Like what you're okay with in some ways in terms of art consumption. I'm not speaking about, you know, condoning the behavior.
Oh, yeah,
but,
of course.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a personal decision as to the art consumption.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Next thing on your list was YouTube. What I think is fascinating is YouTube has gone through a million different stages, right? At the very start, there's an old wise tale that, and it could be true, but that YouTube was started because at the Super Bowl where Janet Jackson was exposed by Justin Timberlake, people all through the next day were trying to find video clips of it. And there was no way to resource and try to find the video clips. And so these two guys who had previously worked together decided, like, let's create a video sharing platform. And that's kind of where YouTube started.
Whoa.
And now today we have people who are building their careers off of uploading videos to this service. So why is YouTube on your list? What do you love so much about it? And what are your primary ways of using it currently? Yeah.
I would say, again, it's another product of where I was at when I found it. Like, I always, like, in high school and stuff would be on, like, YouTube, or what was that other one, like Addicting Videos or something like that, and E-Bombs World, and what I was always, like, on the internet. I always liked the internet. But when I went to college, I didn't have TV, I didn't have Netflix, I didn't have anything, so I would just watch YouTube all the time. I got really into, like, vloggers, because that was like 2010. That was like vlogging on YouTube was like kind of a new thing. It wasn't as, like, huge as it is now.
Yeah.
I started, like, kind of falling into that, like, watching just, like, you know, like Charles Trippy, who's, like, in We the Kings or whatever. But, like, I was watching his vlogs like for years before Colin was like, yo, or our friend Colin, who's they're like, or runs front of house for them. I was like, I've watched those people. Like, it was such a fascinating, it was like the same indulgence of, like, reality television of like, you watch these people vlogging about their lives, but you also see, like, because it's the internet, when they make mistakes, you see, like, the repercussions of those. I don't know. It's just addicting. Like, I've always loved it. And, like, I still, like, today, I bet most of, like, this morning was, like, catching up on YouTube subscriptions and stuff. Like, I've always I adore it as, like, a medium of, like, it is so vast. The amount, what you could consume on it, you could have, like, you could spend a week consuming one type of content that you think is, like, what YouTube is, but it's only, like, not even skimming the surface of what that content is. Because I get in arguments with people all the time who are, like, who don't think that people should be making a living off of it or whatever. And I'm like, but then I'm like, what do you watch on YouTube? And then I'm like, that's why. Like, these people aren't what I would think are, like, YouTubers. these people are, you know, it's like, it's this strange, small community to the outside world.
Yeah.
That like a lot of people don't think is credible. Whereas like these people are creators and artists that are cultivating entire movements on the internet.
Yeah.
That you probably have never heard of, you know, that like couldn't be on like late night or with, you know, like they wouldn't do that stuff, you know. The ones who do are the ones that like the people who are actually like creators and like powerful people on YouTube are being like, that person's not like us, that person's trying to get into mainstream media, whereas we're rejecting mainstream media.
Yeah. What I think is crazy is that, you know, the start of it was very much user curated, you know, people uploading their own videos. Like I think about like the way I consumed YouTube when it first came out was, what's the funniest video I could find to show my friends the next day to say like, oh, I'm cool, I found this cool video on YouTube. Like I remember watching like, there's this guy who did like fake David Blaine. And so I remember that. And I laughed so hard, and like I was just like, this is the video to show my friends.
That's the Cheez-Its guy.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Like the way he would look.
Yeah, he would just look at the camera.
At the camera. I remember those videos.
Oh man, I love those things, man. And then like the whole end of Z World thing, you know, like it was all user curated. And what I love about it and what I continue to enjoy and why I think there's value in having YouTube partners and people getting paid for the content creation is there are no longer, or at the time, there was no gatekeeper to, you know, being able to be successful as a content creator. Like you didn't need a studio to tell you that you could do this, you know? And it's so true with every different field. Like when I was in high school, I was really into singing and playing guitar or playing ukulele and stuff like that all the time. And so I would get sucked into other kids who were just singing covers all the time. And some of my favorite artists now are people that were playing YouTube covers on YouTube. And you can see it all the time with people who are, you know, chefs and do cooking tutorials or this is how you change your oil. You know, like YouTube is a medium for everything. And on top of that, it still allows you to see Janet Jackson's boob the day after the Super Bowl because people are going to upload that video.
That stuff too. That's the whole thing, is this completely open world. That's the beauty of like the internet in general, but like YouTube as like a one source of those things of like, you can consume anything. It could be negative. It could be terrible.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of times it is, you know, but it's like the beauty of that open consumption, like that is a good thing because so many dialogues happen, so many conversations, like you fall upon things that like maybe you wouldn't totally get behind or whatever. Like I don't know how often I do this a lot where I'll go into like the rabbit hole of like a belief system I have, and I'll watch all of these videos on a person who thinks just like me, and then I'll be curious and I'll click on a video of someone who I totally disagree with and just watch it to be like, what is the anti-me? What's his argument and what's he's like? I love that I can do that.
Yeah.
And that all of these people, as long as they're not like hurting other people or whatever, like they're able to voice that opinion. Like that's beautiful. There's a power of like YouTube, the internet, whatever. Like it's an amazing platform for that, you know?
Yeah. No, I think it's incredible. And it's even replaced a lot of television in the sense that kids now especially only watch influencers on YouTube. You know, they don't have TV shows. And you know, I remember one of the things that was important to me when I was growing up and just getting ready for school in the morning is I would throw on VH1 and watch all the early morning music videos, you know. And now that's the videos with the highest amount of plays are all music videos. It's, you know, Despacito and Justin Bieber and Gangnam Style at some point, you know. It has really replaced modern television for a lot of people.
My niece is 6 and she's all about YouTube. And I was like, when I was back in New Mexico for Christmas, like I was just like watching YouTubers that she watches, and they're like, you know, they're all like, there's like this girl who like takes like plushies and like rebuilds them, and people send her like these stuffed animals that were like destroyed, and then she like fixes them and turns them in. And my niece like loves it, consumes it constantly. I'm like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Like, where do you want? She's like, well, I want to be a singer, and like I would love to be a YouTuber. And like she's like 6 years old.
Wow.
YouTuber is like a career choice to her. It won't be by the time she grows up, but like that's crazy that it's a dialogue she has right now.
Yeah, no, that is crazy. Good, transition is memes, right?
Yeah.
So I had the hardest time initially understanding memes, and it's one of the things on your list. At the very start, I honestly didn't know what a meme was. People were talking about memes, and to be honest, while I could probably find a way to define a meme, I think it's such like an open thing, that what people refer to as a meme. But it came back to like, I was researching what the like oldest meme was. And according to like multiple different sites, they said the original meme now is the Rickroll, which kind of like fits with YouTube.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah. For people who don't know what a Rickroll is, there's a Rick Astley song called Never Gonna Give You Up. And there would be so many troll videos on YouTube that it would lead up to some pivotal moment that you're waiting for. And when the pivotal moment in this video is about to happen, it cuts to the music video for Never Gonna Give You Up. And so, we'll play a clip on our Instagram of this example. But man, it was so funny. And I would get so annoyed at so many different things where I'm like, oh, I'm so psyched for this video. And then just getting rickrolled, all you can do is just roll your eyes and be like, oh my gosh, they freaking got me.
Jumping off that, I remember the first time that happened to me. And it was pre-YouTube. The first time that I got rickrolled, I was on E-Bombs World, and I was like being 15 and dumb, or probably not even, probably like 14. So I was definitely like before high school. And I remember being like on E-Bombs World and just like going through their videos. And there was one just like hot girl in a bikini or whatever video. And I remember like clicking on it, and it was. I was getting rickrolled, but I just remember just being like, and just like closing out of it, and only like 15 years later, well, I was like, oh my God, I got rickrolled. And I was like I remember it happening. Yeah, I guess that would be like an original, like the start of
first
memes.
Meme. Yeah. My initial understanding was memes was like, because I remember even Googling it when people started using the term all the time, and I'm like, I don't even know what this is. And what I understood it was for the longest time was like only a specific subset of memes, which was like the troll face or the what was his name, like the angry rage version, like all those drawed faces, or like the cereal guy. Like I thought that subset was memes. But now it's very clear that memes are like ideas or behaviors that are super specific within culture, and are specific with phenomenons that are going on and represented by a specific image or represented by a video clip. And it's interesting. So what are some of your favorite memes, and what do you love about meme culture?
I don't know, like my favorite meme is, I go through like different, like I feel like genres constantly. Like right now I'm big on like just possum memes, like just like my Discover page on Instagram is just only possums, where it's just like these like weird, like strange, weird looking possums with like some kind of like dialogue or whatever. But I just love meme culture as a like commentary of just like, and you also get like a window into various groups' sense of humor, like a meme that your mom shares on Facebook versus like a meme that like your little sister shares on Instagram or Twitter or whatever is going to be like drastically different. And probably like your little sister's going to put some weird like surreal meme that makes literally no sense, but it's like funny because it's like satire. Whereas your mom is doing the like a boss meme or some shit, like some just old stale thing, you know, like it's just so fascinating. And I was actually just talking to a friend about it the other day about it makes me realize how non-unique your life experiences are. Like you'll see this, something that should be super niche about like, I saw actually perfect example. I saw a meme the other day. It was a remote, and it was just like a pattern of like tracing the arrows and like going around the circle in the center and then following it down. It was just like a commentary on like, you sit at the you're watching TV and you all do the same thing with your thumb and trace the lines of a remote.
Yeah.
Everyone does that. But it's like a thing that you think
Is unique.
Oh, I just do this all the time.
Yeah.
Like you see those kinds of memes that just make you realize you're like, oh wow, like
Yeah.
everyone else has this experience, you know?
The one that got me is it's like you're holding your phone, you have 3 fingers behind your phone, your pinky's under it, and your thumb's on the left-hand side. And I was like, oh my
You're like,
gosh, like
oh
I'm
my
literally
God.
doing this
Yeah.
right now, you know? So no, it's crazy. I think that's funny too, that like it's true that you're saying, hey, your experience is not unique. But what I also value about meme culture from my experiences, it's also like I think the core fundamental being a human being is the desire to connect. And I think forever, even before necessarily meme culture, that's always existed. Like I think about like movie quotes, you know, and they're not necessarily memes, but they were memes before memes. Like I don't know how many times like people would just come and say some funny movie quote from an Adam Sandler movie, like what you thinking about, Swan? Or don't quit looking at me,
Quit looking at me, Swan.
You know, like my dad would just say that for no freaking reason all the time, you know, but like that's a meme in its own right because you're able to connect and you're like, oh, I know that reference. I know what he's talking about. And you're connecting with someone just based on a quote. So as much as it is like understanding that your experience is not unique, I think it is a way to just connect and say, look, we are all the same and we are all in a lot of ways, you know, experiencing this same chaotic existence, you know?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I was going to say it's interesting to me to see people compare memes to movements of art like postmodernism and Dadaism because I think it directly speaks to kind of the way culture moves in cycles like that, and it kind of becomes a joke of itself and becomes self-referential.
Yeah.
So it's like nobody could have really predicted it except for we do stuff like that all the time. Like,
it is like it's a weird facet of art, self-reflection and commentary. Like it really is. Like I feel like you could hold courses that are like, you know, memes 101 and like be like, here's the beginning of this. Here's where like Pepe the Frog turned into a really horrific like white supremacist like icon and turned culture this way. Like it's crazy how like memes can affect society and it's so amazing and crazy. I love it. I don't know.
I'm sure, especially now, what we're seeing now because of the presidential elections and stuff is almost all the memes I see are political at this point.
Oh, the Bernie meme right now.
The Bernie meme,
like once again, I'm asking you to open up this pit. Or whatever.
Just about to mention something like that.
I've been seeing those like crazy.
Yeah, me too. There's one with Bernie like at a rally, and it's kind of from behind the podium. And the caption is just like, Bernie's rig is insane. And he just has a pedal board, guitars. It's awesome.
It's again, a super hilarious commentary on like the types of supporters he has of like, you see like on all like my like, you know, like Hard Times News or whatever, like my like, or like guitar rig based, whatever Instagram follow, they have all these like super niche Bernie memes, you know?
Yeah.
And that is, it's like, the culture, the type of people who are investing into like creating this meme are all from like a similar mindset. And that's why it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude, memes are so crazy. I also love I love meeting somebody and then like, or just knowing someone and then like figuring out how to cater specific memes to just them.
Oh, yeah.
Like our friend Caroline, like I know that I can send her like our memes that we share back and forth are like super weird because she's like a very weird sense of personality. So I could send her just like the weirdest things I find and she'll be into it. And then I have like our friend Zoe who I send like very like specific, a lot of the time like reptile memes or like whatever, like little things or Isabel. I'm just like, you look at our thing and it's all just like horoscope stuff or just like cat memes and like nothing else. Like it's just like our relationship. We build these like foundations of like a little dialogue we get to have because of our strange like connection through memes. You know? But Isabel literally every day just blasts me with Gemini memes about how I'm a terrible person. Like every day, man. And I love it. I think it's amazing.
Oh man.
Yeah. I have like friends like that too, where it's certain kinds of memes and then you kind of pick and choose.
Yeah.
You know, one that was really fascinating to me and my group of friends was I would say probably like 2 years ago was probably the height of it, but the whole burnt meme phase and like how everything just went like kind of like memes just kind of went to shit, and it was just like the more absurd, the more funny, the more it kind of poked fun at like Instagram filters and how people would kind of portray themselves that way.
No, I think that's such a funny thing of like, I saw like a meme about it the other day of like tiers of like age group and like the memes they like enjoy. And it was like the Like a Boss meme in like 2010 where people thought that was funny. And then it's like SpongeBob memes. And then now it's like surreal memes where it's like a floating head and it's like a toilet and like some phrase that has nothing to do with anything. Yeah. And it's just like age groups. Like, it was like a Gen X millennial. It was like a whole like, commentary
Gen
on that.
Y,
Where it's like, it really is like surreal memes and stuff. You look at, I followed like a bunch of meme pages that are just like surreal memes. And it's like, this stuff is weird. Like none of it, it's funny for some reason, but it makes literally no sense. And if you were us in 2010 and someone showed you that, you'd probably just be like, this is what?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw like 4chan and like weird places of like consuming things, but
it's like such an inside joke that it would take forever to explain to someone kind of the contextual.
It's like you have to just be the type of person who thinks this is funny, and then that caters who you send it to. I love that. I don't know. I love memes, man.
Memes. Okay. Let's move on to your last one. We're running short on time, but last one is horror movie Scream. Wes Craven film, slasher horror of some sort. So talk about Scream. What do you love about Scream, and when did you first come across it?
I think I chose Scream because I love horror movies, but Scream is one of the first horror movies I was ever shown. My sister, again, like my culture creator for my entire life, she played, like, showed me it for the first time and was like, this horror movies are crazy. And then you get the lore. It's like the most descriptive horror film because it gives you the whole idea of like abstaining from certain activities or else you get murdered, and like the whole like the inner dialogue of a horror film, while also being a really good movie. Like it's just straight up an amazing film. The whole time they're telling you like, this is the guy that's doing everything, but you're still being like, I don't know, I'm not sure. And then they just fucking spin it on you, and you're like, oh, it's an amazing movie. And all like the second and third and all awful, but the first Scream is insane as like a dialogue, you know, of like horror films and like the structure to how one should exist. It's absolutely one of my favorite horror movies ever. It just spawned my like excitement about horror movies. I feel like it is absolutely my favorite genre of film, and I'm constantly just trying to find good ones because it is like such an oversaturated market of just like awful, terrible movies. And then like every once in a while you fall on like a really good one, you know?
Sure.
I feel like that's what with you when I first met you guys, with like Eric and Sean and Morgan too, was like some of the first people that like enjoyed horror movies in the same way that I did.
Yeah.
And we were able to like talk about like actually being excited about horror movies.
Sure. Yeah, I think it goes through like waves because I like one of my favorite horror films is this horror film called Gravy. It was like a pretty low budget film, but it's about like these guys who, what they do every Halloween is it's a guy and his brother, and they become cannibals for one night only.
Whoa.
And so they'll like throughout the year, they're scoping out a place where they can host their cannibal feast, you know? And so this year, this one night on Halloween, they go to like this taco restaurant that has no windows, only one exit, all this stuff. And it's the prime spot for them to break in, lock it down. And then it gets super gory because they're like creating legit meals out of these people that stayed in the store. And so it's like this story of them being in this one thing. But like, I also think there's value. I'm bringing this up to say that like Scream, it's not an Oscar-winning picture. You know, it's not. It's not the pinnacle of film. But even the shitty, gory, you know, horror movies, like they're good, man.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
yeah.
think they pay homage to like a fear or like this just uncomfortable nature that, you know, is so interesting to me.
Definitely.
With Scream, my experience with Scream was I was terrified of it as a kid, you know,
Yeah.
because I remember, I mean, for me, it came out when I was 3,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so like if my parents were watching it and I saw Ghostface, I was terrified.
Yeah.
So much so that even when Scary Movie came out,
It
I was
so
still a
spooky.
kid. I was like,
yeah.
no,
I feel
no.
that. I remember feeling that
Yeah.
sentiment too. 100%.
Rewatching it yesterday, you know, I rewatched it before we had this conversation. I started catching some of the stuff you're talking about, like the self-aware nature of the film, where they all recognize like that they are characters of a horror film, and
Yeah.
they're living in all these tropes. And like the director and the writer did such a good job. Like there's moments where Nev Campbell's character is like, oh, all the, you know, big-breasted girls,
Yeah.
all they do is they run up the stairs instead of going out the
Yeah.
front door. And then a couple scenes later,
She
she's
runs
running
up
up
the
the stairs,
stairs.
you know?
No, that's I think that's why I specifically said that movie, because it's like, especially slasher film wise, it's like there is this like tongue-in-cheek concept, you know, you like Friday the 13th, any of that stuff, or Nightmare on Elm Street, like the first Nightmare on Elm Street and the third one is incredible. And it's like when he starts like saying bitch a lot and like being like, it was like they went over the top because it was so ridiculous, you know, like
Yeah.
the fun you could have of watching a movie that kind of keeps you like spooked, but like at the same time you're like laughing,
You're in on
at
the
it
joke.
because it's silly,
Yeah.
you know, like Scream is like the perfect example of that, because there are like you know, like It Follows or something that is just like incredible and just like an amazing film, and you don't entirely understand what's going on, you're just like unnerved, you know.
Yeah.
Or like I thought Creep, I don't know if you've ever seen that. That's like another one. It's like Mark Duplass. He has like Creep and Creep 2, and it's all super just like off-putting and uncomfortable horror. It's not like overly violent, anything. It's just purely like, it's just you feel uncomfortable the entire movie. You know, like any of those of like evolutions of a genre type, but like there's this fundamental category that like across all horror films exists of just like, you see these people have sex, you're like, they're gonna die. That's part of the narrative. You know, like it's such a interesting thing. You know, some weird morality creation through like a violent, spooky film. You know,
Yeah. What I liked about Scream is they did turn some of those things on their head. You know, like when they were billing it, you know, there's all these incredible actors in it: Drew Barrymore and Courtney Cox and David Arquette, Jamie Kennedy, Matthew Lillard, like A-list
Jamie
cast.
Kennedy was like, that was like cream of the crop back then too.
Yeah.
He was like the guy back then.
Yeah.
He like fell off the earth entirely.
That Jamie Kennedy experiment show, I loved it so much. And then everything he did after that, like he did Son of the Mask and stuff like that. And it's just like
garbage.
just garbage.
Even like kicking it old school. Do you remember that movie? Oh, it was so trash. It's bad.
But what I was gonna say is like they bill Drew Barrymore and she's like credible get for that movie at the time, and then they kill her in the first 10 minutes.
First 10 minutes of the movie,
Oh man, like some of my favorite things rewatching back were like watching like that. If I were to show this to a kid now, they might find like some horror elements, but there would also be like so many things they don't understand. Like there's a scene that like they have these cordless phones that they're talking on at the time, right? And when she dies, right, when Drew Barrymore's character dies, she's being dragged out the back. And the mom picks up a completely different phone, but she could hear what's going on the other side. A person watching this now would be like,
Wouldn't get
what?
that.
How is that
Because
happening?
you don't have a landline at home. Like you don't understand. Wow, that's fascinating. That's such a good point.
There's so many things like
Or
that.
when she's trying to call the police from her phone or from
Or
her
the computer. She's using
911, it's like
Microsoft
green
DOS.
text.
Oh, it's the old
You're just like,
DOS.
what? Like, no, all of that.
Another thing too is like they didn't hear about the news that their friends got brutally murdered until they went to school the next day.
Yeah.
So it was like they show up and they're like, "Oh, did you hear Carrie died or whatever?" And it's just like that would be all over social media. You would know
within minutes.
everything by then. So
Yeah.
I also had a hard time watching back because I've seen the Scary Movies. Because like
interesting.
Scary Movie did such a good job at parodying Scream
Yeah.
that some of the movements that Ghostface has in Scream, I'm like, kind of laughing, and it's like
Yeah.
I had a little bit of a disconnect with the film.
That's funny
of
because
that.
I never really invested into the scary movie like parodies. So I would be curious to watch them and see like how accurate it is now after like loving Scream so much.
Yeah. Scary movies are horrible. Like they're not at all good films. I hate that type of, well, I mean, now this is just my opinion, but because they were obviously successful, but I hate that parody nature. They go a little too far and it's like super grotesque, but they do a good job in like capturing some of the elements like the voice or like the movements and stuff. But anyway, before we wrap up, there are a couple things we asked 5 questions to send everyone out. These are a little bit quick fire. So short responses, they don't have to be long, elaborate. Cool?
Okay.
All right.
That's hard for me.
Yeah. If you could be on any reality TV show, which one would you choose?
I'm just going to say that Blind Love one just because that's only the...
Love is Blind.
Love is Blind, yeah. That's because I'm watching it right now. So I'm like,
Hold up.
This sounds fun.
Yeah, I just started watching it. So we might edit this part out just for since it's supposed to be quick fire.
Yeah.
But with Love is Blind, man, I could not believe that there was someone who proposed on the 4th day.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. There's this person you've never met, you can't see. And in 4 days, you're already proposing to marry them.
That show is such a weirdly beautiful and wonderful commentary on like what it's like dating now.
Yeah.
Like just the idea of being like, they're having these like, I love this person so much. I'm like, you literally have known this person for a week. You can't possibly love this person. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's I love that show. But I also love that they're just like, there's that guy Barnett, the like broiest bro. And he's like, when I hadn't seen it, the girls were watching it the other night. I walk in and he's just like in his like sweatpants with like a glass of wine, like, you know?
Yeah.
And all these girls are like, oh my God, I'm so in love with him. And he's just like the fucking grossest just dude of a man. And he's like, but he's drinking like a glass of wine, like he's being like classy in his like bro sweatpants and like tank top. It's an amazing show.
Yeah. No, I want to finish it, you know, because like, but at the start, I'm just like, this is freaking ludicrous. Man.
I love it.
All right. Next question. If people have never consumed any of the things on your Pop 5, what's the one thing that you would want them to all go experience right now?
I would say Scream, probably.
Scream?
That's like, I tell people to watch it all the time. Yeah.
Okay. All right. As a producer, if you knew that this session you're going into is the last session you're ever going to do, which artist that you've never worked with before are you choosing?
I've always wanted to work with Charlie XCX. I would love to be in a room with her. Cool.
Nice. When we get her on the pod, I'll hook you up.
Yeah, we'll be bros.
Yeah.
Sick.
All right. What is a dream that you've never said out loud?
I don't know. I think I voice pretty much everything I feel. So it's always kind of difficult. I'd say I share too much.
What are 5 words you'd tell a past version of yourself? They could be 5 individual words or one phrase.
Chill out. Get over yourself.
Okay.
That's actually,
there you go.
Chill out. Get over. That's amazing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice.
Before we go, is there anything you want to promote? Anything people to go, check out of your work or your artist's work?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess all of my bands. I don't know how to I don't know everyone's like Instagram handles or whatever, but I would say just like follow at Telephone Killer
For sure.
and then see what we're posting on that. And then I guess my Instagram at DVNCY, that would be like a window into all of my bands because I don't know everyone's like perfect example.
Yeah, and in the outro, I'll look it up and I'll share everyone's stuff so they can go follow.
Yeah, because literally everyone I believe in, follow all of them. That's what I want. Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, hey, Devon, thank you so much for coming. It was awesome to have you. And I love geeking out with shit and hopefully you come back.
Yeah, this is fun. I'm in. We'll do it every week.
All right. Cool. Love you, buddy. Thank you.
Right, me too, Doug.
Thank you.
Bye.
That'll do it for today's show. Today, we're going to end things a little bit differently. We're going to be playing a song by my band Pool Toys. The song is super special. It just came out, and Devon worked on it really hard, just as much as me and the rest of the band did. As always, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at MyPop5. Leave us a review. But until then, listen to this song, Slow Down, by my band Pool Toys, produced by Devon Corey.
All around this life is changing, but the feeling always stays the same. another. But with every day I leave behind, I wish I could slow down, slow down. All I want is to slow down, slow down. I wish I could slow down, slow down. All I want is to slow down, slow down. Millionaires in broken pipe dreams. Sometimes it seems like all or nothing. Pieces slowly rearranging, but the meaning always stays the same. I know that long nights turn into lovers. New days are just to start over. One moment leads into another. But with every day I leave behind, I wish I could slow down, slow down. All I want is to slow down, slow down. I wish I could slow down, slow down. All I want is to slow down, slow down. I wish I could slow down, slow down. All I want is to slow down, slow down. I wish I could slow down, slow down. All I want is to slow down.